Hello, you beautiful lot. What's going on in your world? I'm back. It's not going to be editorial here. It's not going to be this, that, and the other. It's just going to be me straight talking to the camera. I know you guys enjoy the edited bits. I hope you've enjoyed it over the international break. We've been trying to put the finger on the pulse when it comes to Leeds, hopefully making that change at some stage. But today we are going to be speaking about Daniel Farke's recent interview, which has got Leeds fans hot under the collar again, and it exemplifies absolutely everything that I've been mentioning this international break when it comes to Daniel Farke. We've spoken about those characteristics of which, after the Forest game, just take accountability. Take accountability. Say maybe we got it wrong in this instance, we got it wrong in that instance. And people say, well, he's not going to admit that. Managers admit that all the time. They admit that they get things wrong. They don't always deflect. Unfortunately, we do have a manager right now who absolutely has perfected, got a diploma, a master's in deflecting. And this interview with Sky Sports, it just worries me, to be honest with you, because it doesn't feel like, once again, there's any learnings, any adaptability and realism. And normally when a manager comes to the end of his tether, that realism goes out the window a little bit. And we're going to get into this interview right now. But Daniel Farke's realism has absolutely gone out the window. And I was reading this the other day, and I thought about doing it yesterday, and I thought about doing a video, but I thought, now I'll just leave it to really take it in. But this has got Leeds fans very hot under the collar, very hot under the collar. So he did an interview with Sky Sports yesterday, and let us know what you think in the comment section below to this. So he said, performance-wise, once you sign a contract as manager of Leeds United, you have to be ready for it, the pressure. Bang on, bang on. But then he says, after each and every loss, fans are asking for a sacking after the match. You take it personally or dwell on it, then you have your chance to be successful here. Now, I think Leeds fans, and I've got a community of which are quite balanced, I would say. You know, there are people who are one side of it, there are people who are the other side of it, there are people who just stick in the middle with it. There's no one who's like, you know, far Farke or far Daniel Farke out, I don't feel, but there is some of you in the chat, but it's normally a minority. And it's fine to have that, you know, opinion as well. Football is subjective, I always say this. But what isn't subjective, in my opinion, is the majority of Leeds fans who have been behind Daniel Farke probably up until the Nottingham Forest game. And still, it was 50-50 when it came to that away end. For him to go out and say fans are asking for a sacking after the match to Sky Sports feels quite gaslighty. And I don't like that whatsoever. I think that is completely wrong. They're not asking for a sacking after the match. Maybe irrational fans are asking for the sacking of Daniel Farke after matches, but I think normally the people who have actually curated a thought process on Daniel Farke is because they have formulated that thought process through Leeds being in the Premier League and being able to succeed in the Premier League, and not thinking you are right for the job because you have never proven it, and you are probably going to continue to not prove it. And we've gone through all the rhyme and reasons through that over the past however many days in the international break. But it was interesting there. But after each and every loss, and this lines onto his next quote as well, which I want to get into, fans are asking for a sacking after the match. They're not, Daniel. They're really not. That is the consensus is not that. And the minority might do. And that's probably what he's leaning on there, the reactive bunch. However, what I will say about this is I think the majority have turned and swung after that Nottingham Forest game because it's just not been good enough recently, and you can't get away with that in the Premier League. So he says, so championship level, it was after every draw that it was the manager's not good enough. I think he's probably close to the money there when it comes to a draw. And he obviously went through that period, didn't he? And I think it was culminated with a draw at Swansea at home, where the manager, there was probably a lot of pressure on Daniel Farke last year as well, because we had the most lucrative squad in the division. We had one of the best squads in terms of value that the Championship has ever seen. I remind you, you have the likes of, you know, Ramazani, Nonto, Solomon last season. You know, you have Joe Rodon, who you brought in for 10 million quid. We have the likes of Junior Firpo in the Championship, and we know he was too good for that level. Dan James as potentially a bench option rotation with Nonto. The squad depth was ridiculous, absolutely ridiculous. So yes, there was pressure on him last season, and there probably was pressure on him to win the league as well. And I think that's probably where the apathy comes from, in a certain sense, with Leeds fans, because last season there was a obvious sort of necessity that Leeds were going to needed to win the league, and then we did win the league, and it wasn't as joyous as maybe we thought. I don't know. For a lot of fans that I speak to, it's been a little bit like that. I think as well, Farke didn't help himself with stuff like keeping Ilan Melier in the side for as long as he did, and effectively costing Leeds points with that. So I don't think it was more based on results. I think actually Farke got a lot of praise, even from people like me last season. But what I do think as well is you had the most lucrative squad in the division, 100%. And I think the fans were a little bit more annoyed with Ilan Mele decisions and stuff like that. But overall, Farke did the job that was laid at his door. It was to get Leeds United promoted in the top two. That was the objective, and he achieved that. He said the outcome was being back in the Premier League with the best season in the history of the football club, obviously with the best side we've ever had at championship level. And then he said, of course, I don't expect that we again finish with 100 points in the title. Our title would be survival. Not wrong. Something that no other newly promoted team has managed to do in the last 2 years. Yet true, but you do have Burnley who are effectively on the same points as right now, and Sunderland who are flying. So that context has to be applied to both those sides as well. So he says, we know it's a long road. There will be setbacks. I totally back my players and believe in this club. Yeah, he's bang on to establish this club back in the top flight. Context would be that you're not going to be here to do that in years to come unless you do adapt, Daniel, because this is the problem right now. So he said it's important when you work for. This is the bit which got me, and ironically, it's probably something that he's tapping into here. But he said it's important that when you work for such an emotional club and such a passionate fan base. Now, what he's doing there is he's effectively putting positive and negative connotations with calling Leeds United an emotional club, and he does it a lot. Like he always says when we come back from the international break, he always says that we lose our first game and he says it's just Leeds United. He does that all the time. There's a Farke bingo, and we know what normally happens with it. The avoidance of any accountability whatsoever, adaptability being sort of not within his arsenal, but also, you can almost point to what Daniel Farke is going to say when it comes to the Leeds United fan base, maybe having an opinion on him, which he doesn't vouch for. Leeds fans are an emotional bunch. Newcastle fans are, Sunderland fans are, Everton fans are, West Ham fans are. That is the football world. It is what it is. But Leeds have got a passionate fan base, and he's right. But I think what he's trying to do there, in a strange sort of sense, and this kind of follow, you'll hear what he says in this paragraph. He's setting it up just to hit that home run. It's important when you work for such an emotional club and such a fan base. So he's saying he's calming everything down. He's keeping everybody assured. 4 losses in 5 isn't a problem. The fact that we've got one of the hardest runs up until the 7th of January, no problem. Everybody's got to calm down and just believe in me. And I would believe in him, but I don't believe in him. And the reason behind that is because of the recent results, and that's what he judged on. He said 2 weeks ago, a very important home win against West Ham, and everyone was already saying survival is confirmed. Nobody said that. Absolutely nobody said that. And it's a shame that he said something like that, because that's disappointing, because that's behaviour of which from Farke is, I think it's quite out of order, because he's telling Sky Sports there and a very, media, obviously, it's a national publication, isn't it? Which is going to go out to however many thousands of people, that the Leeds fans, and maybe if you're not a fan of Leeds and all this sort of stuff, you'll see this Daniel Farke interview. I saw a lot of comments from West Ham fans and Burnley fans, etc., Wolves fans below it, and you might not have heard what the general fan base is saying. Daniel Farke is telling Sky Sports and a big media outlet in the UK that loads of Leeds fans were saying survival is confirmed. Nobody said that. Literally nobody said that. You'd beaten West Ham. You've obviously, I think at that point, you just lost to Burnley. Beating West Ham was an absolute necessity. And then you've gone on to lose 2 games quite handedly. And he said, but not one team has been relegated with it. Leeds' record after 10 games. And then he said, let's worry about Europe. Presumably saying that Leeds fans are getting excited now. They're talking about Europe after beating West Ham United, who I believe in the game against Leeds United hadn't won in X amount of games. Daniel, nobody was saying that. They'd just been beaten by Brentford 2-0 at home, and the fans had booed them off, and there was about 20,000 people in that stadium there. Leeds beating West Ham was a necessity. It wasn't an unbelievable result. And then he said, this is Leeds United. So once again, you formulate that sentence together. He's called us an emotional club with a passionate fan base. He said everybody afterwards is saying survival is confirmed. This is Leeds United. So effectively, We get too high and we get too low, and we're a unique fan base in that respect. Not that every other fan base does that, and he's the measurement here. He's the calming influence, but that's Leeds United. So thank God I'm here. He then goes on to say, which was the most worrying thing, because there's evidently no reflection here when it comes to Farke whatsoever. 2 weeks later, two difficult away games, granted, but could you go there with Nottingham Forest, who haven't won a game at home since the beginning of the season, and get a point? Other teams have done it. I mean, Sunderland, you've already spoken about the newly promoted sides. Sunderland have already gone there and won, and they've got a draw against them. Could you have gone and got something there against, I thought, a pretty poor Nottingham Forest side on the day? Made it maybe a little bit more difficult against Brighton, who you tried to play out from the back against when they've got the highest turnover rate, one of the highest turnover rates in Europe. He says 2 weeks later, two difficult away games, two tight losses, and not our best performance. Everybody is panicking. Daniel, we're not panicking. Nobody's panicking. Everybody's just at the point now where we think you should be relieved of your duties. You've done a great job. You are going to dine out on that Leeds' record after 10 games, and I think you're right to do so. I think you're right to do so. You've got Leeds up 100 points. I think, does the mass amount of Leeds fans now genuinely believe that you can take us to that next level in terms of even just keeping us up? No. Do the majority of Leeds fans genuinely think that you can improve profiles of players and have different pragmatic views on how to adapt your game plan to certain specific opponents? No. Do I think that another manager could come in and do a better job than you with certain aspects of our team and certain patterns and sequences? Yes. So as of right now, 2 weeks later, two difficult away games. I told you guys in the previews, he's going to have that excuse right there. Bang, straight in the back pocket of these being two difficult away games. The context not being Brighton had just played midweek at Arsenal, lost, played a lot of their first team, really, when you look at it. Also had 7 injuries for the game up against Leeds United, 5 of which do start for Brighton. I understand there's depth there, but could we have made that a little bit more difficult and not just get battered like we did? You've then gone up against Nottingham Forest, who've just played on Thursday against Sturm Graz in Austria. Played a decent amount of their first team there as well. Chris Wood's out, Callum Hudson-Odoi's out. They've got another 5 players out as well. And we've gone there and we've done nothing. The first half, we've had 1 shot on goal. So that's not you making it difficult, mate, at all. I think what's massively frustrating about that is he's stoking the flames. He's absolutely stoking the flames. And the problem for Farke right now is the easy games, so-called easy games, which Opta and other data sites have spoken about, are out the way. Leeds are on a downward spiral when it comes to performances. And yeah, don't get me wrong. I think the fans can be a little bit emotional, but I think it undermines our justified analysis of what is going on right now. And I think it's poor for Daniel Farke to come back and do that. I think, once again, to not take accountability and downplay this ridiculous dip in form and speak about the losses being narrow is a really, really poor look. Let me know what you guys think. Am I taking this a little bit too out of realm, out of range? I am looking at his press conference on Thursday and expecting some of the exact same stuff. It will be everybody else's fault but Daniel Farke's, and I'm expecting a fair few monologues. But apart from that, everybody, it's all happy and jolly. But let us know what you think, everybody. Like, comment, and subscribe. See you in a bit. Cheers.